guy cut me off, and I leaned out of the car. And what I was thinking is, I was going to grab his bumper and flip his car over. Is what came to my mind. And sometimes it's like, like we went to New York, and I was like, look, when we're there, I need you to stay with me. There's a lot of people. And they're like, well, somebody take us? And I was like, that's why you got to stay with me. They're like, what happens when they take you? And I'm like, people killed kids, put penises in their butts. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's what happens. He pulls up. I go in the parking lot. I was like, hey, man, you're not welcome here anymore. I'm like 13, 14 years old. And he said that he was going to he's like, fuck you, bitch. I'll slap you or whatever, spank you or something like that. I lift my shirt up, and you look like you saw a ghost. I was like, get out of this car, I'm shooting you in the face. Leave.
Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I believe there's a God. It's not like
I'm Jeremy Lakash, a retirement community CEO living in Eureka, Illinois, and you are listening to the Vance Crow podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad you're here. Today, Jason Bockman returns. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you know I had Jason on 5 years ago. And during that bombshell conversation, we heard about a childhood that most of us can barely imagine. It was chaotic and troubled, and Jason ended up having to escape a cult and almost got sent to prison. This conversation was really amazing, and I remember thinking, wow, this guy who looks like this giant gym bro is actually a really philosophical, thoughtful person that has figured out how to connect with others in a way that most of us could only dream of. Jason has become a successful businessman and a respected and admired member of the St. Louis community. I know that over the years, as we've done interviews and Jason and I have seen each other outside of this studio, I've come to really admire and respect who he is and how he thinks about things. So what you're about to see is a conversation of two men, two friends, that don't get to see each other very often, but have shared a lot over the years. And I hope you feel like this is a chance for you to sit down with some friend that you've gotten to know over time. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about God. We talk about my mentor, Pete. But ultimately, the conversation really gets interesting when we talk about fatherhood and how Jason is preparing his children to leave the Garden of Eden. We talk about innocence and how much you should protect it versus preparing your children for a world that can be cold and uncaring. This is an unparalleled conversation, and I think you will see that it is really something special. If you like this, I hope you'll send me a DM and tell me about what you thought of it. And maybe even better than that, if you would consider giving us a 5-star review and writing positively about not just this episode, but the podcast in general. That gives us a chance to grow, be seen by more people, and helps us find more guests like Jason to bring on. We're going to get to that interview in just a moment, but earlier this week I had kind of a profound experience. I had 2 of my friends and a complete stranger talking with me about legacy interviews, and they were all saying the same thing. It was approximately, I just keep putting it off. I know I want to do it. I've talked with my wife about doing it. I've thought about it. I've even gotten my siblings to think about it, but I just haven't gotten it done. Now with my 2 friends, that's okay. I'm never going to do a hard sell. Whenever it's right for them, I know it'll be right. But the stranger that called me actually wasn't telling me that he's going to do it now. He said, I'm calling because I was too late. My mother passed away about a month ago, and I should have done this interview. And now in hearing the podcast, I want to reach out to you to say, you got to do a better job of convincing people to overcome that procrastination. Now, I don't really know how to do that. I know that many of the reasons that people don't do it are around, I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if I can get my siblings on board with it. I'm not sure if my parents will like it or if it'll make them uncomfortable thinking that maybe they're going to pass on, and that's the only reason I'm asking for these stories. Whatever your objections are, whatever the things that are keeping you from it, maybe a way to get past them is to give us a call here at Legacy Interviews. I've talked with hundreds of people about this, and almost every one of them decides, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to overcome these challenges in this way or that way. But most of the time, the reason that we procrastinate is because we don't know what the next step is. So the stranger that had called me up said, you need to do a better job of helping people know what that next step is. So the next step for you could either be to go to legacyinterviews.com or check out the show notes where I have the phone number for Legacy Interviews. If you pick up the phone and call, you'll either get me directly or you'll get our admin, Jessica, who is one of the best conversationalists out there. And she can talk with you about what challenges you're facing and how we can best prepare a legacy interview for your family members. I'm telling you this because I think it's going to help you. I think that if you've had this sense of dread that you wished you'd gotten it done, like my friends have talked about, that this will make you feel great. And with the holidays coming up, you have the perfect reason not only to get it done now because you can give it as a gift, but also if we get it done in enough time, you'll be able to watch it over the holidays with your family. All right. Enough about legacy interviews. If you're interested, go to legacyinterviews.com or call the number in the show notes below. All right, without further ado, let's head to this powerful interview with my good friend, Jason Bockman.
Jason Bockman, welcome back to the podcast.
Glad to be here, dude. Good to be with you.
Dude, you're looking huge.
Yeah, I don't know. I swear, everybody's been telling me, like, dude, you're huge, jacked, look like a Spartan, whatever. And I trained for an Ironman like a couple of years ago, and I don't know if that like changed my body. I've been like staying on some of that stuff, but like my body, I don't know. I've been taking testosterone for a few years, but not like anything crazy. Not like I'm juiced up, but yeah, I'm big and strong.
When you got on testosterone,
Yeah.
do you feel like it changed the way you thought about things? Because I think about it as being like, you could give yourself the testosterone of an 18-year-old, but isn't that why an 18-year-old makes bad decisions?
I don't know that it like at the time in my life when I started doing it, I was having like panic attacks and shit all the time. And like before this point, you know, I don't know that it ever really changed like the baseline of the way I thought and stuff. And those things don't have, I think some of that stuff was circumstantial, but like outside, I slept better, right? Like, which I didn't sleep for like, 20 years. Like I'd sleep 2-3 hours a night. Sometimes like no sleep 3 days at a time. And then, I don't know, like, I feel like it regulated some of that. I don't know how much of that is placebo or whatever, but I'm older. And so I'm sleeping better. And, there was some time, I'll say this. So this isn't, argue is it steroids, whatever. I don't know. I'm sure it is. I don't know the definition of steroids, but I'm taking testosterone, right? There was a point where I didn't know that I was taking steroids, like in my 20s. My friend was like, here, dude, these are whatever. We were just taking these pills, right? And working out. And I gained like 30 pounds in like a month and a half. And my bench press went from like 185 to 315, right? And I was like, dude, I had an FJ40 at the time, a 1972 FJ40. It didn't have any top, sides, nothing, not even seatbelts, And I was driving with these two girls, and this guy cut me off, and I leaned out of the car. And what I was thinking is I was going to grab his bumper and flip his car over. This is what came to my mind. And I was like, and the girls were like terrified. And I was like, yo, what? I just thought I could flip a car, And I was like, dude, what is this? So he's like, well, it's called Tren. This is steroids. I was like, what? And dude, I got off it like immediately. And then like my dick didn't work for like 8 months. And I was like, this is horrible. I'm never doing that again. I didn't know. God's honest, I thought I was taking like a men's multivitamin.
Well, steroids, that's like very clear. Hey, you learn in DARE. Hey, man, all these bad things will happen. But TRT has been something that's grown and grown and grown. We're at the age where there are a lot of men that are like starting to do it.
Yeah.
And my experience has been the two people that I knew that got on it, their risk tolerance went way up. Like
really?
To the degree that you're like, hold up, why are we making these risky decisions? We're not 18 anymore. We don't have to be. And, so I drew those 2 points to be a straight line, but it may not be.
Yeah, it hasn't been my experience. Yeah. I was listening to this story on NPR about somebody transitioned, and this girl said that she got on testosterone to transition and started having like, she's like, I hate that I'm even saying this out loud, but like, he or she, whatever, like, I started to have like taking an interest in science and math, right? I don't know. And they were like, I think there's something to that. Anyways.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Like the human mind is so crazy complicated. I've as I've started to learn more and more about nutrition, every time I get to this new level and I'm like, now I understand, macros. Oh, now I understand proteins, carbs, and fats. But every time I'm like, oh, wait, I found this new thing out that completely obliterates everything I thought I knew. And
there
so
was
really,
three ingredients in those macros. I just need to be one ingredient, and it needs to be from Scandinavia, whatever. There's always like deeper stuff with that. I'm like, drink a bunch of water, keep your body moving, don't eat trash.
well, you're around donuts all the time.
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself from just inhaling donuts and sugar?
When I eat them, I go bananas, right? And I'm like, I'm going to eat some donuts today. I'll eat 12, like instantly. Like, and I don't know. I just, I love sweets and stuff. And so, but I know that for me, being around it all the time, it's not worth it, like, to go hammer time.
Yeah, I'm like such an on-off switch, right? Like, it's really hard for me to have 2 drinks, but it's very easy for me to have 0 drinks, right? It's really easy for me to have no donuts. It's very hard for me to have 1 donut. So I only do like all or nothing.
That's what I do. When I go on trips, I go hammer time. I was all over California this summer with my kids. I went on a bunch of trips, but I was going to this bakery every day, spending like $60, and it was fire. Arcicult Bakery in San Francisco. It was so good, and I would eat like, literally, I'd probably eat like 8 chocolate croissants and like a couple of almond croissants, and I go hammer. My kids are like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is what I do on vacation." Some people, drink and do blow. I go for croissants.
Yeah. My wife and I call it carbcation, where you're just like, I can just eat whatever carbs I want.
Yeah,
It won't
I'm on
matter.
vacation. Yeah.
Well, I got to the point with carbs because I will eat pizza to the no end. If there's a pint or whatever, a gallon of ice cream in my freezer, I will eat the whole thing. Until it's all gone. And I think I was like pre-diabetic. I think I had like gotten to the point where it was like I would have this stuff and then I'd be like 45 minutes later I'd be asleep on the couch and my kids would be like slapping me on the face being like, "Wake up and play with us, Daddy." Yeah. And so I had to make some pretty wild changes.
Yeah. I get it. I'm that way with life in general. Doesn't matter really what the thing is.
So you, since we last spoke, you've now put up this totally different restaurant that's serving the late night community.
Yeah.
I've seen you all over the news, people talking about it, but what's it really like behind the scenes?
It's cool. I have a partner in it named Nate, and he does, a lot of the day-to-day stuff. It's going really well. The first store is like bananas. Like, if you figure like a restaurant has like 30 tables and they try to turn those tables during dinner like 2.5 times, right? So what is that? 75 tables, right? So you would have what's called a check, 75 checks. And we're doing like, between 300 and 400 checks a night.
Whoa.
Which is insane, right? So like a busy restaurant would do 100, and we're bananas. We opened a second location, and it's going well. It's not like the first location, but there's like some thing, it's not that old of a restaurant. And so there's some things that we're doing to change it. And I don't know, it's like, it's fun, it's interesting, it's cool, it's invigorating. And I'm like, I want to keep pushing it. So it's interesting.
I found myself saying something about you the other day. I was telling Sean, the editor, hey, my buddy Jason Bockman's coming in, we're going to do a podcast. And I said something, and as soon as I said it, I was like, I regret saying that. I was like, man, everything Jason touches turns to gold. And the reason I regret it is because it like totally diminishes whatever it is that you do to make things work. But it does, I will say, seem easy. That everything you do is just like, oh, that one worked. Oh, this other thing Jason did worked. Is it like that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think about this. I'm like, I've been doing this in some capacity for like 25 years. So when I was like, we're going to do this concept, it was easy. It was like, I didn't need to make as many mistakes, right? So I know which mistakes to avoid. And so I'm still learning some things on how to be better. I always will be, but I know up front, if I do these things, this is the outcome. So it seems easier now. It is easier for me.
What were the mistakes that you were hard to learn?
Being arrogant, get a little bit of success and think like you're the man, and then like start shitting on the people that support you. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you need me, I don't need you. Like, no, I'm like, I work for every customer. You are my boss. Some stuff with marketing, staying out of like during, like I have a friend who owns like a bunch of restaurants here, right? And like when political things are going on, it seemed like all these people are commenting on all this stuff. And these people are like, cheeseburger, we got a cheeseburger. You want this cheeseburger? You know what I mean? Like presidential assassination attempt. And people are like, good, fuck them. Some people are like, man, we need to stand behind Trump. And they're like, we got a cheeseburger, you know? and I was like, what is the deal with that? Like, 'cause some people would like say things to them, but like so rarely, like, you know, why don't you get behind some of these pushes or, you know, social issues? And they're like, we have cheeseburgers. That's what we do here, is we sell cheeseburgers. We will sell a cheeseburger to you regardless of who you vote for, what you look like, who you like to have sex with. We have cheeseburgers. And I like used to mix those two. And I think that when I get behind personal social issues in my business life, I alienate my customer base, you know. So that was a big one. And there was a big mishap that happened with me. I mean, it was all over the news. Like Tucker Carlson tried to interview me. I don't know if it was crazy.
No, what happened?
It was in I thought about this last night and I forgot about it. Like we had a store in Columbia. It was like where like a lot of like the Black Lives Matter stuff really jumped off. And you know, I have a furniture company also, so I get like these reports of like incoming student numbers, right? So I know to tell them how, you know, like you should be planning for this many new mattresses, dorm pieces, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, you bought these 400 couches 5 years ago with this many people coming in, you probably are going to need to replace, you know, half of them. So the store already wasn't doing the best. And then I get this report saying there's 45% less returning students. And I was like, shit, if it's not going well right now and our customer base is these people and it's cut in half now, it's our most expensive store, probably best to just cut and run, you know? And so I made this post, and the thing that I messed up, I just was walking into a meeting and I said, get out of Columbia, right? And the image that popped up was this girl going, get out. And you clearly was saying, get out. And I was like, oh, perfect. Right. So I posted that picture and I said, hey, you know, not working out here. Like, thank you guys for these 2 years or whatever. We're focusing our efforts on different stores. And we were in the middle of like starting to open stores in Mexico. And so I was like, I need to use this energy over here. You know, no big deal. I went in, dude, and I got out of this meeting that I was in, and I turned the phone off. My phone was going bananas. And I was like, what is happening here? And it was like, you know, you racist piece of shit, like all this like crazy. And I was like, yeah, what? And then it was like it was crazy. I was liking everyone's comments, every person's comment, just because like I couldn't get to them. There were so many. But I wanted to let them know, like I saw that. So every comment I liked, right? And then it was like screenshots taken of the likes, and it was like, you know, owner Jason Bockman cuddles up with extreme supremacists or whatever.
And this was the journalism school, whatever, like doing that circle and the woman, you know, being like, get out of here. Was that the image you used?
My hand to God, dude. I'm not this inflammatory dude. Let me say some stuff to piss some people off. I'm just not that dude. I was like, oh, perfect picture. You know what I'm saying? This is perfect. And like, it's recognizable. And I didn't know, you know, it was so charged. And, but yeah, I like these PR people were like, dude, you need to, I like what I wanted to do is like take a video of me and be like, hey man, this is what happened. You know, I didn't mean to offend anybody. I picked this picture because I thought it was a perfect picture. If I offended people, I'm sorry. Like, I love you. I like whatever. And they were like, do not do that. You need to make an apology immediately and blah, 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 blah. So I wrote this apology. And when I wrote the apology, people were like, you know, like, not good enough. Kill yourself, like straight up. And there were some people that were like, I will never support your business because you apologize to those people, you know? And I was like, man, I felt so alone, dude. It sucked. That sucked. I realized last night, because somebody told me about this thing that we were talking about earlier, that like, I realized last night because somebody told me what was happening here locally with somebody who's like a, you know, very visible figure in St. Louis. And that it doesn't sting me anymore. But like until recently, it still was like a pain point for me that like, man, I'm not that dude, and I wish it wasn't taken that way, and I wish that I could like go back. But now at this point, it just doesn't matter. I think the person who I am and the person who I've consistently been has erased any of that or diminished like the negative repercussions of it.
It's just wild, right? Like you say things, if you're on camera enough or you're trying to do enough in social media, if you're trying to ride that wave, I mean, if you're doing anything of substance, you are going to get burned. Like a couple weeks ago, I was on this podcast called Farm for Profit. And I was just saying, hey, I think when we were in school in the 90s, we were being propagandized that having children meant the end of your life. And the way that the clip was cut and the way I said it, right, there were all these women that came out of nowhere to be like, look at this misogynist saying that, you know, and like took what I had said and turned it. And like, as I watched the clips, I'm like, well, you know, you probably could take it that way. That's not what I meant. But people being so angry, right, trying to spike up that attention. And you're like, but that's not me. And I'm pretty sure if you and I were sitting down and having a conversation, you would probably agree with what I'm saying here. But you're like either getting your jollies or like expressing some kind of, I don't know, extreme emotion. But it's wild. Like I'm 42 years old and I'm sitting there being hurt by what some woman, you know, 500 miles away said.
Right. I get it. Because you like what you do, right? And it's important to you. Like, so I do think about like, yeah, it's not, I'll think about people slamming McDonald's or Jack in the Box or Walmart or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, that's a real dude on the end of that's responding to all that stuff.
Oh, I knew the whole team that did the social media for Monsanto.
Yeah.
Imagine what that was like.
Oh, forget about it.
Right? Where people are showing you like dead babies and, you know, poisoned people, like the worst images you can imagine. People are bots in a lot of cases. But some guy has to sit there. And the guy that I knew for most of the time I was there, his name was Wes. He's like the nicest, quietest, like, you know, hey, I just want to do some social media. Just every single day having a hell of a time with what he saw.
I'm going to go get a Slurpee after work. And it's just a real dude. Right. It's crazy that we forget that stuff. It's easy to. It's easy to like dehumanize. I've thought this like as I've gotten like, part of getting older is getting a little set in your ways, right? And I like try to fight that by like staying open and listening to like, you know, more people's opinions. And, you know, if I listen to a podcast, I try to listen to like the counterpoint of the podcast, you know what I mean? Like if it's politically charged or whatever. And it's easy to start like disassociating from people, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that we probably talked about this before. I pretty much have quit trying to do I'm going to do left and right. I'm just like, I don't have enough time. So I just listen to what makes you the most comfortable, right? And then you wake up 6 months in and you're like, I wonder if like the other side has any idea that this is what I think of them or they think of me. Like I am certain that, and now I know that I have a giant bubble around me and I only see what's inside of it.
Yep.
But the effort and energy and value of trying to find the other side seems insurmountable when you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a business and a wife and a...
Yeah. I'm just out here trying to get a Slurpee after work. Is what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Like, but like people will put, anyways, like I think everybody understands what we're talking about and like everybody can relate to that for sure. I don't know. Somehow, yeah.
I heard a line the other day. I wonder how this strikes you. It is, wisdom is knowledge that doesn't change.
I think that might be, you know, why I opened successful businesses, right? I've learned stuff, you know what I mean? Like hard learned lessons that I know that, you know, regardless of what's going on or what trends there are, these things always work. And it probably comes back to like very basic, you know, religious text stuff. Be good to people, work hard. I don't know. Wisdom is knowledge that doesn't change. Yeah, for sure. No, I think there's some basic things that I adhere to that probably everybody does. You know what I mean? Good or bad. Like wisdom doesn't mean it has to be good. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. I guess put in that case, if it's knowledge that doesn't change, the dark side is the same thing.
Right. It has to be.
Have you seen a rise in religion recently?
Yeah, which is wild. I have.
Where do you see it?
It's excuse me. With younger people, Bible studies and just people like in their like clothing and stuff. Like I see like, religious text on clothing a lot now. And I'll ask people, one of the first questions, not first questions, but like when I get to know somebody, I'm asking if they believe in God. And it's usually people around like my age and stuff. And it just seems like so many more people are like involved in like, church or temple or their whatever their respective religion is. But I think like a lot of young people, well, there's like less drinking, right? There's less like sex now, premarital or whatever. There's like less young people having sex, good or bad, I don't know. But I feel like, people are always looking for something. And it seems like there's been in society such a swing away from religion that like the rebellious thing is to be religious.
Yeah, I thought about that the other day. That like, and that it's now within the Overton window for somebody to wear clothes that have a religious thing on it, and it's not like, oh, that's the weirdo. That's like, oh, that's the guy that doesn't care what people think of him. But
right,
that wasn't the case a few years ago. It doesn't seem like.
I agree completely. Yeah, and it's funny that I still like, and I don't, whatever this is, I don't need to apologize for it. I'm like, kind of weird, man. That's weird to me. I don't know.
Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I believe there's a God. It's not like I do. I pray every day. I actually do. Here, I have something for you.
Oh,
this is your book back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've had it for a couple of years. I've read it several times, and it's like, and I really appreciate it.
This is Only an Irish Boy by Horatio Alger. So my mentor Pete was a Horatio Alger orphan, and so he always talked about that. I gave you this book like years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was in Medellin this year a couple months ago, and there was a building, right? There was all these Botello statues, and I was talking about like I went and saw Pete in New York, and I opened the door. It's like crazy, but like he had all these Botello paintings, and I was like, "Is that?" And I couldn't pronounce the guy's name. But he's like, "Oh, my friend, blah, 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 blah." And he said his name, and I was like, he had all these original paintings from Botello.
Oh, that's right. You went to see Pete, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was awesome. He was awesome. He was so cool. And like
I had forgotten.
It was like I went,
that.
it was like, when Neo goes and talks to the Oracle.
Yeah.
He seemed that way to me. Man, that dude was so interesting. But yeah. So anyways, I was in Colombia. And I saw, and we get back to that, whatever, but I saw Botello, and then there was in this building that I guess used to be the Capitol building. Now it's an art museum. And there was a Horatio Alger's plaque. And I can't remember if it was like the building was dedicated to him or dedicated to Botello. But then there was like this long, I think Botello might have been one of the recipients of the Horatio Alger's Award.
Oh, that would make sense. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's why they were homies.
Yeah. He used to talk about, we're not pronouncing that correctly, but right now off the top of my head, I can't think of it. He's the guy that makes the oversized statues of at the time they were grotesquely fat. And now you look at them and they're, kind of normal. But that's, Pete was the one that introduced me to art. I was a total like, art doesn't matter. That's just for those other people. And he opened up a whole world to me.
Yeah. I opened, I knocked on his door. One World, United Nations Plaza. I was like, what a badass address this dude has, right? Open the door. He's like, "Good evening, Jason. How are you?" I had some candies for him, and he started laughing, and then he handed me some candies, like almost the same box of chocolates, right? And then, so he was standing in my way of my line of sight, and he moved, and this painting in his entryway was the
man with the apple.
The man with the apple, and I was like, I'm looking at him like, yo, this is a real...
Yeah, Marguerite, yeah.
I've never seen anything like this outside of, including art museums. I've been to some like cool art museums, so I was like, this is crazy. And I was like, this is, and is this on his dining table? I'm like, is this? He's like, that's a Remington, whatever, the sculpture. I was like, this motherfucker is the most interesting person I've ever met in my life.
Oh man, I can't tell you. This makes me so happy to hear.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that connection happened, because it's impossible for me to describe for people, and I try as much as I can to like share all the things that he taught me, because like you're right, I got to go sit with the Oracle for 10, 15 years or something like that. How much it changed my life. So I'm so glad
he loved you so much, dude.
You make me cry.
Yeah. I got this other book for you. Speaking about God, here, I want to give this to you for a few years. It's been pivotal in my life.
Okay.
As you can see, it's all beat up. Around the Calendar with Emmett Fox. So like Emmett Fox, if you're not familiar with him, was C.S. Lewis. They were like best friends, and they were like early on like Christian. They were thinking way outside of the box with Christianity. And so he's written these books that are like very dense, and they break them down into daily readings. And so you end up, during reading that book, we'll read like 6 of these books. And there's like been some real pivotal stuff that I've like incorporated into my life. Like there's something in there, like these people, he was just like a psychiatrist also. And so he's religious, but he was like leading like this thought revolution in the early 1900s. And so like a guy comes to him who owns a grocery store chain, right? And it's a small store, and like this big box company moves in, and he comes to him like, I'm ruined, this sort. And he's like, no, pray for their success. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, if they're successful, I'm going to be smashed, And you'll come to that reading, I'm sure, at some point. But he talks about like, about the abundance in life. And if I am thinking I want someone to fail, it opens the door for failure into my life. But if I'm like, I want you to be successful, then I'm inviting that stuff also. So I've done that. Like, and this guy who was like a mentor to me, still is, awesome guy. He reminds me a lot of Pete, the older dude who was an artist and like awesome guy. I had a hot dog stand, and this hot dog store was opening. You know what I mean? And he's like, pray for that. I'm like, fuck are you talking about, Mike? Like, I won't be able to eat. And he gave me that book, and I read it for a while. So it's cool, and it goes like daily. So
thank you, man.
Yeah.
I will read it, and we'll talk about it after.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude, you got it.
So on the God conversation,
Yeah.
I find this to be very stressful for me to talk about, because I am very comfortable changing my view on this all the time. Like some days I'm like, nah, man, we're just a speck of dust in the infinite universe that nothing matters. And then other times I'm like, how could you possibly be a speck of dust? Where did that speck of dust come from?
Yeah.
But imagining something could be above the universe, looking down on all of it, is like so far outside of my spectrum that I can't understand it. And I don't find solace in listening to ministers or priests or pastors or rabbis. In fact, I sit there arguing relentlessly with them, because I'm so averse to like, let's all gather up and do a movement. Like it just doesn't fit me, right?
I get
so anyway, that's
what
where
I
come
do
out.
not like cool, tatted up young preachers. Yo, this is what we're gonna do, guy. I was bad too. I smoked cigarettes once. I'm like, I'm not Catholic, but I went to Catholic church several times, and I'm like, man, it's been said this way for thousands of years, and that's like the wisdom and this knowledge. It doesn't change. I'm like, these people are still saying the same thing. I do think like people who are like extremely religious, it like simplifies life a lot. Like, I don't need to like go build a thing today to be successful. I just need to glorify God. And I think about some of that stuff, and sometimes like I'm like, man, those people are dumb. But then it seems like those people are successful. And
I mean, more than once, I have taken things I learned while growing up in the Catholic Church and applied them to my life. Like, it's very easy to ask yourself, does this bring me closer to God or whatever that image is, or further away? And if it takes you further away, then probably don't want to do it. Like,
right.
And that's a pretty good heuristic. Like, I don't think that heuristic is going to lead you down a path that ends your marriage or destroys your business. It's going to take you down a path where things get better. And so in that regard, I'm like, well, then I'm pretty foolish not to believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, all the things that just get packed on and onto religion and faith makes it's just hard for me.
Yeah, I like it. I talk to my kids. This is what I do with my kids at night. Tell me something you're proud, that you're grateful for today. Some way you help somebody else, and something you're proud of. like grateful for, proud of, and did help, right? And so like that's basically prayer, right?
Yeah.
Is saying those things out loud. And so I am trying to lead them to like a religious life without, religion, just a foundation and a relationship, saying something out loud to something that's bigger than you. And like sometimes I'm like, God, I need some fucking help here, and like my kids are like talking about like how I pray, and like I pray, I say, help me be the man you'd have me be, is basically like the only prayer that I say, right? And then sometimes when it's real thick, I'll say that like I need some fucking help, and my son was like, you cuss at God? I'm like, yeah, God is like my friend, and like I cuss with my friends. So there's not like, I used to think, that like God hated me, because my life was so bad. I'm like, no matter what I try, how, like life is going to shit on me, and God picks certain people and doesn't pick others. I've in my life, that's just not true. I do think that there's like something like between us, all around us and above us that wants good for us. And I like started like, there's this thing that I was reading for a while. And it talks about like, the goal is to become like that, to recognize that our parents are instruments of our existence, and that God is our true father, right? And then we become our own loving parents as I grow into adulthood, right? And like, that just brought me some comfort, like I think you can be a man and still feel like a child, and look for other people to like correct things in your life. And I'm like, I'm my parent. And something happened. Like I don't know if you do this, but meeting somebody and I'm like, hey, what I say something and I'm like, why did you say it that way? You know what I mean? And be thinking about it for like weeks, and see that person again. You're like, oh, I fucking talked about Hot Wheels with that guy. I'm supposed to. You know what I mean? But like, there was something happened in my life that was like, as I started trying to go down this path, like something happened that was truly embarrassing, that I really messed up, and like I had this thought, and I'm like, okay, I need to be my own parent here. And what would I say to like my kid? And I was just like, I understand why you did that, dude. Let's not do that again. Okay, bud. It's all good. And I responded to myself saying like, all right, thanks.
When you become a parent, like for me, I always viewed it as, before I was a parent, that my kids were like mine. I'm in charge, right? Mm-hmm. And now I realize like they have entrusted themselves to me for 18, 20 years to take care of them and to guide them, but they are entirely their own person.
Yes.
And that they're not mine. I don't own them. I'm responsible for them. Anything that happens to them that's within my spectrum of control, I have to be on top of. But like, when my daughter does something to be in trouble, it used to be like, oh, a parent, you get them in trouble because that's what you do. I don't have a framework for it. And now it's like, what is the way I can discipline her so that she understands what happened and doesn't want to do it again? Mm-hmm. Not a punishment because I need to extract, something.
Yeah.
Because she did bad. Make you feel
shame. Right.
Yeah. And I couldn't have known this perspective, but now it's like, I understand now why it's difficult to discipline your kids as an adult, because you're not trying to punish them. You're trying to get them to learn.
Yeah. And I've messed up and punished them because I'm upset. Right. I was point on what you're saying. Like, they are not a blank slate. Right. I used to think that like kids are a blank slate and you download all your like morals and values and thoughts and ambitions and talents onto them. They have their own thing. Like, my kids are similar to me, but like they are their own individuals and they see a different path than I do. And I know now, I mean, my son, both of my kids are smarter than me. I know that for sure. Like, they have higher IQs. They understand things quicker and like in different ways than I do. And I think I know like they're way more intelligent than I am. And I'm not smarter than my kids. So sometimes I really like, hey, can you help me with this? And it's cool to have a different perspective on stuff, but I've like definitely like punished them. Like they could do the same thing one day, and depending on where I am in life, what's going on with me, I will treat them different. Then the next day, I don't know, my kid yesterday, my son, he got upset. He kicked the ball inside the house. He's been like having a temper lately, right? I'm like, I remember like one day I grabbed him. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you acting like this? And he's like, I don't know. And man, I remember that. You know, I was much older than him, like doing crazy shit. And like, I did not know why, you know. He's not old enough to process that stuff yet. But then the next day, like, and then he like felt shame that I was like upset and all this. And, you know, he was like, I hate you and whatever, all this stuff. And the next, then I was like, man, I don't like that. And I talked to him. I said, I don't like the way that happened. I don't like the way I responded. And I don't like the way you acted either. Are you okay? You know? And like, you know, and I said like, if you don't want to talk right now, that's fine. But whenever you're ready to tell me about how the way you feel, I'm here to listen. And I'm concerned for you, right? Love you. You know that I love you, right? Yeah. Cool. Have a good day. And the yesterday something similar happened. He got mad, kicked the ball at this glass door. You know, it didn't break. And I was just like, I had that like well up in me, you know, like snatch him, you know. And I just said like, hey man, it's okay to be angry. Everybody gets angry. It's not okay to act like that. It's not okay to like, you know, break stuff around you because you're angry. You doing all right, man? You know, and what was like several hours of like reparations, right, before turned into like, it condensed into like 15 seconds and was like, I love you. And he didn't need to walk away feeling bad about what happened.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
My daughter is 4 and like her verbal ability is just off the charts for a 4-year-old. It's just truly incredible. And it prompts me to think that she is much older than she really is.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not always like, it's like the boy that's, you know, taller or bigger that gets
Right.
treated way older and like it has expectations. Same thing with her. And what she does is she knows there's words around the house that we just don't want her to use. I just don't think they're very ladylike. I don't think they help, you know, endear her to other people. But I found that she would use these all the time and I was going insane. Like, why are you saying poop? Why are you yelling this around the house? I hate it. It's hard for me to even say that word here.
Okay.
And I heard a line that really helped me. And it was, children cannot distinguish between attention and love. And so it's the same thing to them. So if they're not getting love and affection, they are going to seek out attention and they are not able to determine between the two.
Have you heard this? If we do not spoon feed our children love, they will learn to lick it from a knife.
Wow. That's even
It's a little more harsh, but I'm like, but they will learn. I think that's what it said. That's what the saying. I'm like, it sums up what they'll get it somewhere else, right? Saying crazy words, acting wild, you know, like, yeah, if I'm not like giving them the attention, you know. And also, I'm like, man, I'm not raising a child. I'm raising a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I have 2 girls, and that's been something to figure
and
out. Like,
and a woman.
One of the hardest things for me, like last night, I have tremendous benefit that 2 nights a week, I could look at it as a terrible thing or a great thing, is that I go pick the girls up. And we don't want the girls sitting at their school for any longer than they have to be. So I have to leave work a lot earlier than I want to. And I got a lot of stuff to do. And, but if I can embrace it and be like, well, I'm here, I'm going to make them dinner and I'm going to try and find a way to interact with them. But the hardest thing for me is I am so tired at the end of the day that my daughter wanting me to chase her or wanting me to dance with her, I'm like, I want to, but like, can't we just do this later when I have more energy?
Mm-hmm.
But I know this flower blooms only one time.
Yes.
And so it's like, get your ass out of that chair. You're not going to be happy that you were flipping through YouTube shorts instead of playing with your girl.
But I also have some grace with myself because I'll do the same thing. I'm like, if I don't go throw the ball one time, I'm like, you know, you piece of shit. Like you should have been, you know, you should have been doing that. And I think that it's normal. Like, man, imagine, I don't know. I could talk about this stuff forever. Being a dad. And I do think like, I don't know if this is like inherent in me, but I feel like it comes easy to me when people complain about their kids. I'm like, how could you? You know, like there's nothing better than this.
Yeah, there's nothing that's more interesting or engaging or worth your attention after you get the kids down, right? It's only things that you like are deriving pleasure from, but it's not more important, that's for sure.
I just love it. I love it all. I've never like, get me out of this or like get me away from them. One time they were going crazy in the car and I had like, so I just came from like shooting range or something. So I had some earmuffs and I just put them on I'm like, they'll work it out. And I feel like because I was like, spread super thin. But man, like I can use like gratitude as a weapon against myself sometimes, or like positive thinking as like a weapon against myself sometimes. Like,
what do you mean?
Like, you should be grateful. Why aren't you grateful that your kids want to play with you?
Oh.
And that does nothing good for me. I'm like, man, I am tired. Like, excuse me, there was something last week. I was like, man, I am exhausted, and like, I just like turned something on and laid down for a minute. And I could say, I wasted that time, and I would do that in the past. But like, I'm also a human, and I'm like open with them about that. Like, we had a conversation, I'm single, and they found out that I was like talking to some girl, and he was very upset about it. Like, my kids are like, and I talked to him. It was, I'll tell the whole story, whatever. So I'm talking to my son and my daughter, and they're asking these questions that are super personal. Are you kissing her? Are you having sex? Are you wearing a condom? Like all this stuff. Because as soon as my kids were able to like ask the question, like, where do babies come from? I just told them, right? I'm like, you put your penis in a vagina. You don't have to love the girl. It'll make a baby. So be careful where you put it. And you should wear a condom. A condom is a bag that goes over your penis, and it keeps babies from coming in. Like,
how old were you?
I mean, my daughter was going to preschool. My son was on his way to kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and then they were asking, like, can boys become girls? Because that was like in the ether, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, no, like, you're born a boy, and that's what you are, and whatever. Like, so like these questions that they ask, I try to give them real answers in ways that they can understand, And sometimes it's like, like we went to New York, and I was like, look, when we're there, I need you to stay with me. There's a lot of people. And they're like, well, somebody take us? And I was like, that's why you got to stay with me. They're like, what happens when they take you? And I'm like, people killed kids, put penises in their butts, like, and they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's what happens, this. And I was, when I said it, I was like, man, should I have told him that? But I'm like, this is the reality of some of the situations, Anyways, dude, my son's asking me this stuff, and I was like, man, I want to tell you the truth, but I don't know that it's like they're able to understand what's going on. Like, are you afraid of something? Like, is something wrong? And he's like what came out of it? And I told him, I was like, this is uncomfortable, right? And he's like, yeah, this is weird. And I was like, have you ever had this conversation before? And he's like, I haven't. And I was like, I haven't either. I've never talked to my son before about, having a girlfriend. This is my first time doing this. So like, you're going to have to give me like some understanding also. He's 9, that I don't know what I'm doing either, but I need you to understand that I love you. And I never, like, as we talked about the way that he was feeling, he was thinking, I'm going to have a baby with this girl, that I'm going to love that kid more than him. I'm going to love this girl more than him. He's afraid of her mistreating him, and then me not being there for him, and he's alone,
All totally reasonable things for him to consider. Actually, right. Probably a lot of foresight.
Yeah. And so I have to, like, so I tell him, and this is the God's honest truth, it's true. Like, there's nothing in my life that I care more about than them. And they come first. And he was like, and it was wild. Like, I'll tell you the story, and it's graphic, but whatever. We're in California. It was awesome. We're flying back home. We were there for a few weeks, and we did all this crazy stuff. Went to Sequoia, went to, we were in San Francisco, we were in LA, Universal Studios, Anaheim, doing all this wild stuff. On the boat to Alcatraz, renting cars and driving crazy. And, we did all this stuff. And on the trip, I said, what was the best part of your trip? And he said, just being in the car. They said both. They're like, just being in the car with you. Right?
Wow.
I'm like, man, like, I feel this pressure to like do all this stuff and provide for them and like keep them entertained, but really they just want me, and that's fine. I'm so appreciative that I can do all those things and expose them to that stuff. They've been more places by the time they were 5 than I was, almost like going into my 30s. I just didn't grow up that way. Anyways, we get on this flight, and it comes like, so while I'm on this trip, anyways, like, it comes up again that they think I'm dating this girl. And the questions come up again. And this guy, I'm going to try to condense this. So they said, let me get straight to it. So my son says, would you ever, like, what if a girl you marry hits us? And I was like, I would never marry anybody that would mistreat you. I'd never talk to anybody that would mistreat you. And if they did, like, you come first, And then I was like, he asked me a question that I did not know how to answer. And I just stopped for a second. I said, God, please help me. I looked to my left. There's this dude who's huge. I had to play in the NFL, right? Like, massive man. And I look over and he's reading this book that says How to Tell the Truth. And I'm like, hey man, what's that book about? So my son asked me this question. God, please help me. Hey, what's that book about? He's like, it's about, like, how to tell hard truths to people in a way that they can understand them. And I was like, can you tell me a little more about that? And he's like, and he starts talking about, like, the only thing we have is our experience. And I was like, boom, got it. Like, I don't need to, I can just tell you what I went through. I say to my son, listen, man, my parents got divorced. And I was 14 years old. I was 13, 14 when it happened. And my mom dated, like, some crappy people. And there was this one guy that was, like, physical with her, and, like, he was upset. And I remembered this story in the moment. I think it's, like, something that I had, like, blocked out. My mom's upset. We lived in this, like, low income housing, and this dude was. I was like, what happened? She wouldn't tell me. And then she finally told me. She's like, Rick, hit me or shoved me or something. I was like, when is he coming over again? And I told this story to my son. He's like, he's coming over to pick me up in a little bit. And I was like, when he gets here, I just need you to stay inside. And so he pulls up. I go into the parking lot. I was like, hey man, you're not welcome here anymore. I'm like 13, 14 years old. You're not welcome here anymore. And he's like, what? I was like, I don't want you coming around here anymore. My mom doesn't want to talk to you. You need to leave. And he's like, fuck you. And I was like, no, fuck you. He opened the door and I closed his door. And he said that he was going to, like, he's like, fuck you, bitch. I'll slap you or whatever, spank you or something like that. And I pull up my shirt. I had a pistol, right? I was carrying a gun at that point in my life. I'm like selling drugs and wild. I lift my shirt up and you like look like you saw a ghost. I was like, if you get out of this car, I'm shooting in your face. Leave. And he pulled off and he said, he cussed at me on his way out. And I went back in the house and I'm like, Rick won't be here anymore. And my mom was like, thank you so much. And I like felt like a man, like I got praised for this protection, but really like it was like violence, and I told my son that story and I was like, now when I met Grandpa Stan, who is his step grandfather now, I was like, so those things happened and I'll never put you in that situation. I love you, And I'm like, I know that my mom was looking for like a partner and love and sometimes maybe she looked in the wrong places. When I met Stan had a talk with me and he said, I love your mom. She makes me happy and I think I make her happy. We don't have to be friends, but I would like us to be. I think you're a cool kid. And I told him, I was like, it was all very confusing to me because it was weird sharing my space with these men. But I understood at that point that this guy made my mom happy and I want my mom to be happy. And it had nothing to do with me. And we ended up becoming friends. And he said that he understood that. And he started crying a few minutes later. And again, I said, like, you okay? And he said, I asked him if he wanted to talk. He said he did. And I was like, whenever you're ready, this has been a cool line that I use with my kids. Whenever you're ready, I want to know how you feel. So whenever you feel comfortable talking to me. I used to pick them up from school. How was your day? They wouldn't talk. And I would like give them shit for it. And like I learned to say like, hey man, seems like you're not ready to talk. When you are though, let me know. So then, a week later, I was like, hey, I want to ask you about something. He's like, I know what you're going to say. And I was like, what's up? And he's like, wow, I was crying on the plane. I was like, yeah, I want to know. And he goes, it's just sad to me that like, you could love mom and say that how much you loved her. And now like you can love somebody else that much also. I just don't understand how that works. And I'm like, yeah, man, it must be confusing. And I wish I could explain it to you, but I can't.
Sounds like you took him as far down that path as you can, and the rest of it is
because he doesn't have that experience yet.
yeah.
You know, he will. And I think that he'll understand then what he's missing now. But if the feeling is, I love you and there's patience here, it'll get him to that point, hopefully with like as less scarring as possible.
As I hear you describing this, I think of my own orientation to try and keep my kids in the Garden of Eden for as long as possible, where I'm trying to preserve their innocence as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I come into conflict with questions like, should I tell them about Santa Claus, not about the time I showed a pistol to my mom's boyfriend. Did you tell your kids Santa Claus stories?
Yeah, they still believe in Santa Claus. So like I do, me and my son, I feel like, again, I'm like, I am raising adults, you know, and I don't need to be like, this past St. Patrick's Day, I was coming back from the farm. We have a big farm. Coming back from the farm, I put some like gold dust in the house at the farm. And then I paid somebody to like go to my house and like deck the place out. There was like leprechaun footprints and all this stuff. And they went bananas for it. You know what I mean? They like loved it so much. And that like imagination, enthusiasm, and curiosity for life, I try to foster that, you know. But when they bump up against reality, it's not like I'm like, hey, man, let me tell you about this time I pulled a gun. You know what I mean? But whenever they have questions, I try to meet them as realistically as possible where they are, you know. And what I was trying to tell him with me, you know, talking about going out to that car and like showing that dude a gun is like, I was so confused and angry. I was angry enough, like, and I understand your fear because I was afraid. And this is what I did with that fear. So I try to be, because imagine like, you know, everything's great. The world is beautiful and nothing bad ever happens. And then you fly the coop and reality smacks you, you know, like I feel like that is harder for a kid to adjust to, like, than knowing this world is real. There's good and bad, you know?
I mean, as I hear you talking about this, I think I'm a better father now for having heard that story, because the truth is not you're the best parent for keeping your kid in the Garden of Eden for as long as you can. It's keep them in the Garden of Eden and then show them the path out, because I definitely got my ass handed to me. I was naive for a significant portion of my 20s and probably even 30s of just like, oh, the world just works out because that's the way I saw it in the movies. That's the way it was presented to me. And then you encounter truly malicious people or situations where people do not have your best interests at heart and you are not prepared for it, then you get your ass kicked.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, my son, he's like an elite soccer player, like one of the top couple kids in the state. They rank these kids, and he's always like one or two. He tried out for this team that's like big. And he made like the B team, you know, and he was like devastated. And I was like, you know, you didn't make the team because like when you're in the huddle, like you're outside the huddle not talking to the coach, you know. And he's like, I want to quit. I'm not doing it. And I was like, oh, you thought this was easy, dog. You thought having like, you know, all this property, you know, because I own a bunch of crap, you know, not crap. I own stuff. I'm grateful for the things, right? I want to talk bad about the stuff, but I have a bunch of stuff. I'm like, oh, you thought this was easy. You thought like, you know, open a business successful, you know, like this is what, like, you're going to learn this lesson over and over and over. And I was like, there's two things that a man does. He shrinks up and says, I quit. Or you square your, I cried telling him. I was like, you square your shoulders up, you know, you look at it and you say, I'm going to fucking kill you, you know, and you go get it. So you ready to go get it? And he's like, I am, you know, and like, I'm like, those are our two options. And you were going to come to that every time as a man, you know?
Fuck. I mean, it happens to you when you're in your 40s, right?
Dude, like, I'm in the middle of it right now. I want to run from some stuff, you know, how to shrink. I'm like, man, I'm just going to sell everything and move away, you know?
Yeah, I quit. I just can't do this anymore. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do something easier.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, I think those are the lessons that, like, I try to explain to him as best as I can, you know. And before that, I could see it coming that he wasn't going to make this team because he wasn't doing what they were telling him to do. A coach doesn't want the best player; he wants the most coachable player, right? And I'm like, I'm leaving one of these tryouts, and I was like, Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team. Elon Musk slept on top of the Tesla building for 4 months or whatever. And who is Elon Musk? He's the richest man in the world. I'm like, he was down.
And still probably runs into all sorts of problems and things he can't solve. And
who's Michael Jordan? He was one of the best basketball players in the world. Yeah, he didn't make his high school. He wasn't good enough to make his high school team.
Yeah, and wasn't even really that big of a deal in college. They kind of knew about him, but what do you think about raising girls? You know how to raise a man because that's what you are. But
yeah, no, it's different. It's I have to. It's different, and it's made me a softer person, and I try to meet the bring up the same lessons with her. She's not asking as much. I try to I try to model to her what a man is that she should look for, and that's my main thing. And I try to love her, and I ask her, I ask my son too, but I ask her much more often, how did that make you feel? And the attention that I give her is different. The attention I give her is, we get our nails done. I try to do her hair. When she wants to do something with me, I'm like, yes, And she asked me yesterday, I don't know if this is answering your question, but just yesterday I was at practice, my son's practice, and it gives us an hour and a half to be alone together, and we play. And I was like, do you mind if I make a phone call real quick? And she's like, God, you're always on the phone. And I was like, one of my friends having a hard time. He's getting divorced, And she's like, oh, he's sad. And I was like, yeah. I'm like, I'm just gonna call and check on him real quick. Call, left a message, thinking about your dog, love you. And she's like, were you sad when mom and you got divorced? And I was like, man, I was very sad. It's, I still get sad sometimes. So she said, would you still be sad if you were together? And I was like, look, I just think that me and your mom fought a lot, and I thought that it was it would be better for me and you and Blade. And I was about to leave the mom out of it, but I was like, and your mom, if you weren't growing up around all this fighting all the time. And she's like, that makes sense. I was like, are you happy? She's like, yeah, I'm happy. And I was like, cool. I don't know if it was I was like, I'm just doing the best that I can with her. I try to put women around her. I try to be the model of a man, and then there's 2 people that watch my kids, right? And that's it. I don't leave them with people that I don't know, or and anyways, there's 2 women that are awesome, moral, fun, patient people, and I get jealous of the way that she talks with them. She's just bah, 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 all this crap, and I'm like, man, I want that with her, but I'm not a woman, and I can't give that to her. Her mom needs to, her grandma needs to, and some of these women that she's around, her friends, I don't know how to I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's a different relationship. I go get my nails done with her, and I take her to salons, and I don't know, I just try to treat her the way that I hope the person that she picks, that's modeled after that.
Yeah, and the hardest part is it has very little to do with what you tell your daughter about what she should want in a man, and it has almost everything to do with what kind of man are you, right? That imprinting is this is the challenge of children in general. They're a perfect mirror of you, and they don't have the filter. Their love is not filtered through oh, is he nice or not nice, or is he tired or whatever, but what you're imprinting on what it is that they should want, what should they aspire to, what is all in what you do.
Yeah, it's a cool trip.
Well, man, I know you got to get out of here. I would talk all day about this, but thank you so much for coming.
I always love
by.
coming
This
on
is
here,
awesome.
dude.
This is great, man.
You're the man. Thanks.